I said, it's like a jerk, like how to get along with a jerk. And then I just said, how to work with jerks. I thought about my own experience dealing with jerks. I thought about my own experience being a jerk. And I thought about my wife's experiences and all the other people who I consult with. And at the end of the day, it's, I can't get along with this person. And it makes my life a living hell.
You are now tuned into the Misi Muse Unplugged, a pop-up podcast variety show helping consultants along their journey to greatness with your host, management consultant, author and blogger, Christy Lindor.
Hey, my go-getters. Welcome to the Misi Muse Unplugged podcast show. I'm your host, Christy Lindor. Thrilled to be bringing you episode 53. And go-getters, we're nearing the end of the show. I'm very excited and cannot wait to talk to you about next steps with where we're headed. But for today, I actually have a really special guest. I want you to welcome Eric Williamson to the show. A little bit about Eric. He is a nationally recognized keynote speaker, workshop trainer, and check this out, go-getters. He is the author of the book, How to Work with Jerks, Getting Stuff Done with People You Can't Stand. I am just so excited to speak with him. Eric is also a consulting go-getters. He specifically focuses on helping organizations strengthen relationships with their colleagues and clients by creating an atmosphere where people are engaged, valued, and they are able to really kind of bring their best self to work. So I'm really thrilled to be having this conversation with Eric. As you all know, go-getters, as consultants, we spend, I'd say 99.9% of our time working with all types of different people, whether it's clients, it's team members, it's leadership, it's vendors. And so I really think you're going to get a lot from today's show in speaking with Eric. Also, I definitely want you to check his book out. So again, the book is called How to Work with Jerks. I'm going to put the link in the show notes as well for you to use it. I think part of being a really great consultant is also being able to influence. And that sometimes means working with people that are, let's just say, a little difficult. So I think Eric is going to really drop some nuggets that I think you all will find extremely useful. So with that, let's get started. Eric, welcome to the Misi Muse Unplugged. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Christy. I'm doing wonderful.
Thank you so much for connecting with us. So it's so funny, Eric. I forget how I found you online. But what's so interesting, somehow we're like in the same like Facebook group or something like that. But yeah. I remember when I was like, I need to talk to this man is when I saw that you were just about to publish your book. And the name of your book was just so amazing. I was like, oh, I have to get him on my podcast show. I'm like, there's no question, because I need to hear, all my listeners need to hear the tips and gems you're dropping with this new book. So maybe before we get into your book, maybe we could take a step back and would love for you to introduce yourself to the go-getters of the Misi Muse Unplugged.
Yeah, sure. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Eric Williamson. I am author of the book, How to Work with Jerks. I'm an expert consultant, and I work with organizations, large and small, to build relationships and strengthen them to create a positive culture and environment where employees and staff are engaged, valued, and developed into leaders. So I've been doing that for the past 15 years or so. And basically, I just have a passion to see people succeed and help other people. And I'm also a family man. I've got 2 kids. I've got a 2-year-old daughter and a 3-week-old son named Jackson and a 2-year-old daughter named Sophia. So that's been one great balancing act. As you can tell, little or no sleep, if any. So, I just been going, but I've been loving every moment of it.
That's awesome. So congratulations on your baby son. I think that's fantastic. I was talking to you before. I know you're probably not getting a lot of sleep these days.
No, sleep is at a premium. But you know what? I think I had some practice with my 2-year-old daughter, who's just a big fireball. Has got tons of energy. As soon as she was born, she was just keeping us all on our toes. I can't recall the last time I reclined in my couch over the past 2 years. Our whole living room was turned upside down with toys and playpens and all this other types of stuff. And, you'll see a stack of my books ready to get shipped out for people who are purchasing signed copies. It's one whole crazy mess, but it's a beautiful mess. So yeah, sleep is at a premium. And sometimes I find a way to steal like 20, 30 minutes of a cat nap here or there. And that usually recharges me before I go to my next event or next meeting. So it's all good. It's all good here.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. So Go-Getters, Eric just mentioned the name of his book. I'm going to say the full name because I don't think you did it justice.
Okay.
People need to hear the full name of the book. So it's called How to Work with Jerks, Getting Stuff Done with People You Can't Stand. Like, mic drop. And Go-Getters, I'll make sure we put a link to Eric's book in our show notes for today's show. But that title alone, that's $1 million title, right?
It took me a while to come up with that title, Christy. If you only knew what I was playing around with before, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'll tell you that right now.
My gosh. It's a winner. It's a winner, Eric. And I'm so excited for you. So congrats on recently publishing. I actually have my copy. I have it. I haven't opened it up. It's sitting with a pile of other books that I have listed that I'm reading, but I can't wait to dig into it. So looking forward to reading it soon. But I guess before we get started and talking about the book, maybe you can share, you mentioned that you do a lot of work with, various different organizations as a consultant. How did you decide to go into consulting and how did you get started in the line of work that you do?
That's a good question. Well, I started out in the public sector as a leader in the public sector, and I did that for about 10 years. And, I don't know if you're familiar with the public sector, but, there's a lot of red tape and just a lot of organizational culture issues that you can find in the public sector, whether you're talking about the state, local, or even the federal. And I won't reveal the name of the organization that I worked with, but I noticed that I had a knack for leading others. I would turn around, teams that were not motivated at all, not producing at all. And I would come in and just provide a fresh perspective on things and really inspire them and help them achieve the things that they needed to do. And so having worked with colleagues and worked with people of all types, I started thinking, I think there's a lot of other people that would definitely appreciate or definitely get a lot out of some of the things that I do to help out other people. Because a lot of people say, well, how did you do that? How did you, turn this organization around? How did you get us from being, from this ranking here and producing the amount of numbers to in the top 5?
Right.
And so what I did was at first, even before I even did that, I said, well, I'll be more than happy to work with you. And I just listened to a lot of the good things. And then I talked to my girlfriend, or I guess, my wife, my girlfriend at the time. She said, what, why don't you, come out with a process? You probably do something that other people don't do. And so I started identifying what that process was. And then my wife was like, well, you know what? Why don't you just go for it? Just start your own business. And I was like, really? Start my own business? She's like, yeah, I think you can help a lot of people. And at the time, she was going through a lot of stuff, too, with her job. She worked in the private sector for a venture capital company. And, she was having a lot of trouble there, too. And so I would always give her all these types of tips and advices for how to deal with the people that she works with. And it was very helpful for her because she was able to manage that situation a lot better. And so, my wife, I'll tell you, she was the one who really encouraged me that, I have a talent that I can help out a lot of other people. And so, I wasn't always that confident. It wasn't until I learned the importance of public speaking, which is why I joined Toastmasters, I don't know, right around that time where I started coming up with my own process for helping people. And that gave me the confidence to share my message with other people. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Toastmasters, but it's an organization where it pretty much forces you to speak in public and work at overcoming or managing your nerves. So once that gave me the confidence, I said, you know what? I was confident in talking, and then I became confident in my message. And because I had some previous success working in an organization and helping my wife who was working in an organization, I said, well, let's just do it. So I decided to start my own business not too long afterwards. And pretty much the rest is history there. I mean, it took a lot of grinding, a lot of getting my name out there because, the only background I had was my leadership position. I wasn't an author. I was a very new consultant. So it took a lot for me to kind of claw and get my name recognized, and a lot of, just speaking at public events and speaking at libraries and schools and stuff like that. And then, people started catching on and said, hey, you know what? I think I can work with you. And then, I went from working with sharing a message with like 20, 30 people to 500 to 1,000 people at certain events, so it's just crazy how things happen the way it does.
Yeah, I agree how things kind of ebb and flow. And I'm so glad that you listened to your intuition, listened to your wife, and was able to really kind of, make some of the transitions that you made. And I'm actually very familiar. I'm a Toastmasters member myself. I became one in the last 2 years. And that's actually been really helpful for me and my career. Not only, I thought it'd just be helpful for speaking, but it actually has helped me overall with my career in terms of just confidence and the ability to convey a message. And It's a great organization. I cannot recommend it enough, especially for the price. The price, you get peer coaching, which helps in so many other parts. So go-getters, I'll also put a link out to Toastmasters. There are like thousands and thousands of chapters. Chances are there's a chapter near you in your local area. So I'll make sure to put it out. And it's international too. So it's not just Toastmasters in the US. They're all over the world.
Yeah, and the thing I like to say when people ask me about Toastmasters, I say, it's the perfect environment to fail. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people have fear of failure, fear of making a mistake. And Toastmasters is just the organization, the environment that allows you to make those mistakes without people, judging and criticizing and feeling like you're just an awful person. You know what I mean? That you have no sense of being on the stage at all. And so, before I go to events, I'm up there speaking, I'm trying out material. So yeah, I echo that. It's definitely the place you want to go to.
Yeah. Well, going back, before we pivot and talk about your book, one more question. So when you think about all the experiences you've had and the transitions you've made, what would be the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Oh, wow. Well, I've been saying this. I just said this at a college before. I had a similar question. And I said, I wish I learned the value of entrepreneurship before, because being an entrepreneur there's nothing like it. And I spent several years, working in an organization. And if I knew the value of being an entrepreneur and following my passion, I think I probably would have gotten a head start. But also at the same time, things work out the way they work out for a variety of reasons. But I would say, to that end, find out what you're passionate about. And I would say pursue that. And it sounds easier said than done. But a lot of people, they say, oh, well, I wish I could do this. Oh, I would love to do this. I would love to do that. And then we say, well, what's stopping you? It's like, oh, well, I've got this full-time job, or I've got kids, or I've got this, I've got that. And we come up with all these things that get in our way of actually pursuing our passion. And before you know it, it can be too late before you can start that. You can get too wound up in things, and you can just completely compartmentalize that passion, that dream, and not even think about it. And then you might just live a life of regret. And that can happen to so many people. And so my advice would be to, whatever you are passionate about, make sure that you follow through on that. And don't forget about it. And always pursue your passion, because you can always make room for it. If your go-getters on this that listening to this podcast are any bit like you, Christy, who are involved in so many things, you have that work-life balance of family and your profession and your passion, anything is possible. If you listen to the Tony Robbins, you listen to Les Browns, any of those people, you can do anything. I know that may sound cliche, but a lot of times we just work because we want to make ends meet. We want to get that lifestyle, or we want to pay those bills, and we don't have room for what we really want. And I think that anyone can do anything they want, especially if you have the right plan. So just pursue your passion. That would be my message.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that.
Now available on Amazon. Management consultant and author Christy Lindor shares career secrets based on 15 years of experience working at top firms in a new book called The Me-See Muse. 100 plus selected practices, unwritten rules and habits of great consultants. The Me-See Muse provides insights, stories and strategies on the unwritten rules of the consulting profession. Christy conducted research and connected with 50 plus industry titans across 27 professional service organizations on what makes a great consultant. For book reviews, tour dates and more info, go to www.meeseemuse.us.
Well, let's pivot and talk about the topic of the day, how to work with jerks. My goodness. So maybe let's start. I would love to hear the founding story of how the idea of the book came about, and just a little bit of the journey of it, what it took for you to write and publish it.
Sure. Well, it took me a total of 2 years to put this book together. And when I first said that, I was like, oh man, I was like 2 years, like people come up with books like every darn day. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, you can't measure yourself to other people, but I had a lot of things going on. I had the birth of my daughter, and that was a bookend to the birth of my son because it was published around that same time. And the original title of this book was a real long title because this book is inspired by emotional intelligence. And, for those of you who aren't familiar with emotional intelligence, it's the ability to manage your emotions and behaviors and understand yourself and other people so that you can build those relationships. And when I first came up with the title, it was something like, how to succeed in today's millennial environment with emotional intelligence, blah, blah, blah. It was so long and boring, and I did a lot of studies with it, and it just wasn't hitting. And then, my author coach, I was talking to my author coach one day, and she was like, you really need a good title. And it wasn't until over last summer I spent hours just thinking about what this book really is about, because that was going to help me come up with the title. And I said, I just thought about people and my own experiences with dealing with just the people that if you had a choice not to work with them, you would not do it. You would definitely not want to work with those people. And I said, it's like, working with, and, obviously I'm not going to say what the real name was going to be, but I said, it's like a jerk, like how to get along with a jerk. And then I just said, how to work with jerks. I thought about my own experience dealing with jerks. I thought about my own experience being a jerk. And I thought about my wife's experiences and all the other people who I consult with. And at the end of the day, I can't get along with this person. And it makes my life a living hell. And that's really one of the recurring themes of what's keeping people from either pursuing their dreams, achieving their results, or doing anything else. It's that barrier, that poor relationship that they have with someone that makes them want to leave the organization, makes them want to do some impulsive reaction or do something that's not in their own best interest. So this was a personal thing, I should say. I started this book out with a personal thing just because of my own experiences, but I knew that a lot of people would understand. It's a pain point for a lot of people. It's, a lot of people have difficulty, getting stuff done with people that they can't stand. I mean, it doesn't matter if you work in a cubicle or if you're a barber. You know what I mean? If you're working with 6 other people, it makes it hard to get work done. And it's a real cost on an organization. It costs money. Not just the organization, but it costs your well-being. It's an impact on your health and well-being as well.
Right. And, I give you kudos for really, seeking to be the change you wish to see in the world, because I think you're right. I think most people's inclination, if they're dealing with, difficult people, their first thing is like, I need to get out of there, right? Or I need to, whatever I need to do to kind of like distance myself from the person. And it does become unproductive. It does become a health and well-being issue. And it does become a cost to the business. So it feels like everyone loses in that situation.
You make a great point, and that's one of the things that, if you don't mind, I just like to reiterate one of the things that is actually outlined in the foreword. A good buddy of mine, Jason Sackett, he put the foreword together. And, a lot of times, like you said, people, they deal with jerks, they deal with a toxic environment, organization, and their first inclination is to quit. And what happens is, you leave that environment, but what happens when you, again, enter another environment and when you work with jerks? Are you going to leave that next environment until you rid yourself of jerks? It's like, almost what Michael Douglas says in Wall Street, a dog with different fleas, And then some people, they try to overpower jerks with their righteousness and say, you know what, I'm right and you're wrong because you're a jerk. And I'm going to go follow my standard operating procedures. I'm going to go to my management, or I'm going to go to HR, and I'm going to tell these people what's going on so I can get them to stop their jerkish behavior. Well, I mean, Chris, if you know jerks like I do, I mean, jerks don't take a day off. They could be one step ahead of you. They can be going to HR, they can go to the management staff, and they can be telling their own version of the story, which
right.
now means you have two sides of the story. And what happens when you have two sides of the story? That means there's really no end in sight. It's, well, let's all get together and let's all try to get along. And at the heart of it, that's the truth. But, when someone's really being passive aggressive, or they're micromanaging everything you do, or they're just a complete jerk towards you, it's hard to get any resolution, especially when you have two different sides, because now a mediator or anyone else will definitely have difficulty trying to make a resolution to it. So,
right.
They're inevitable. They exist everywhere. So without a clear strategy on dealing with it, you risk suffering, which is why I came up with this book, because sometimes people don't have strong HR or management support, or they're tired of leaving their work. and they don't have a clear exit strategy. So the time being, if you're still going to be in that organization or you're going to be in any organization, you're going to need this book to help you get through those situations. And right now, Chrissy, this is very, very popular with college students. I've done multiple talks so far with college students ready to graduate. As you know, May is a graduation month. And I almost delivered a Scared Straight program to them, to some of them. Like, this is what you have to look forward to when you enter the work environment. And
right.
If you're not prepared for that, you can risk really having a bad situation.
Right. It's just amazing. It's funny. I feel like personally right now, I am not dealing with jerks at this present time in my career, but I definitely can see this being kind of the definitive guide to, when you start to bump up against those situations, how you really handle them. But you're right. I think is learning how to deal with them. And I'm glad that you're talking to the college students, because I think sometimes college students, they, there's kind of an innocence there, and they may not realize, they don't know what they don't know, and maybe thinking things are a little bit more idealistic than they truly are. So I love the fact that you're giving people really actionable ways to really deal with it. So, and we'll make sure we put the book out. So go-getters, you have to pick up this book and add it to your collection. So the day that, you deal with the jerk, if you're dealing with one right now, instead of you running away and you suffering, there's ways to really kind of deal with that. So maybe you can share maybe one or two actionable tips that you found really helpful when you've dealt with difficult people.
Yeah, sure. And it kind of dovetails into your talk, when we talk about organizational environment and cultures and stuff. And one of the things that you don't have to be a leader, you can be an employee, but one of the things that you can do, well, first of all, even before I get into, there are a lot of traits in there that you can do, a lot of tools that you can use. But one of the things I'll say about creating a safe environment, and what I mean by that is when employees or when leadership, when you don't feel safe, you kind of ball up, you keep yourself guarded, and you try to protect yourself. But when you're in an environment that's safe, that allows for people to talk freely, to level set, to set expectations, to have all types of ideas and things of that nature flow, whether it's in group meetings or one-on-one discussions, that allows for people to really be able to speak their mind without being afraid that they're going to be criticized or judged. And one of the ways that you can do that is through effective communication, such as holding group discussions like one-on-ones. You can do it with a peer. Even if that peer is a jerk towards you because they're trying to take credit for your work, or they're trying to do this or trying to do that towards you, you can still engage with them, because at the end of the day, if you are working with them, you still got to get the work done, right? So one of the things that you can do if you're working together with someone, you can set up a meeting to discuss expectations about what needs to be done with that assignment. The more you talk things out at the beginning of things, the more that you can be empowered to do your work without having to deal with the back and forth conversation with that person, because you're on the same page and you learn a lot about the other person. You can learn about their perspective. You can tighten the relationship much better by doing that. So I would say creating a safe environment where people can actually feel free to talk and discuss expectations. And I just leave another bonus one too, and this is actually outlined in the book. It's called the AAA method. It stands for Assess, Analyze, Act. So when we're engaged in conflict, when we're having those crucial conversations with colleagues, or if a leader's having a performance discussion with an employee, or whatever kind of sticky situation you're in, sometimes those conversations don't go as planned. People can get defensive or belligerent, or emotions can start, coming every which way. And a lot of times we aren't able to manage those emotions because we're too focused on how to respond to whatever rubbed us the wrong way, or we just want to be able to get our point across, or we're just too upset about that with that person. And basically what happens when you do that is that it just creates even more problems, because if you were mad if that situation was already tough, if you respond the wrong way or you react on impulse, what's going to happen is it's going to escalate. So what you want to do is you want to keep that situation from escalating, and you want to keep the situation as productive and respectful and professional as possible. So I call it the AAA method, Assess, Analyze, Act. The first step is you want to assess your feelings and assess that other person's behavior and what's driving that person or you to respond. For example, is your heart beating fast? Are you breathing heavy? Are you talking fast? Things like that. And why? Do you feel excited? Do you feel defensive? And then you want to analyze, well, what's going on? Well, why are you feeling this way? Well, maybe someone just said something that you didn't appreciate, or maybe that someone took it a little bit too far, or maybe they're taking up way too much of your time by, discussing something that really isn't relevant. So once you analyze that, you can really get to the heart of what's really causing these feelings. And then once you're able to do that, you can act. So, for example, once you've assessed and once you've analyzed that, you know what, I'm upset because this person's saying something that I do not like. Well, what you want to do is you want to act. And how you want to act is you want to act in the best way possible. You don't want to act by combating that person with something to make that person feel bad. Of course not. You want to act in the most professional. You want to take a measured approach. So what you do is once you account for all that, to assessing and analyzing those situations, you can act and deliver the best response possible that's not going to escalate the conflict and that's going to leave on at least amenable terms. So this is ideal for, like I said, performance discussions. If an employee doesn't really like what their supervisor has to say, and the supervisor is trying to get this performance discussion going along, and there's just no headway, there's no agreement to the issue at hand. One of the things you can do before you act is make sure that you assess, you analyze, and you assess the situation. And then you can say something like, well, why don't we carry this meeting over, to the next day until our emotions are calmer? Or why don't we try to bring this back to the heart of what the situation is? I'm discussing your performance and I'm giving concrete examples. Maybe you can bring it back around to what the issue at hand is instead of reacting on impulse or, getting emotional over it or letting your emotions just get the best of you. So it's a 3-step process and it can be easy to do, but you have to do it intentionally, especially if you want to have the most productive and best outcome of a tense situation.
Right. And what I love about that 3-step process is that, to your point, once a person kind of knows it and they have that framework to reference, it's a muscle. You get a chance to do it often. The more you do it often, I think the more it can become a reflex in your toolkit of how you really deal in any type of difficult situation. So I really love it. I think it's really helpful.
Yes, Chrissy, you hit it right on the head. You're right. It is muscle memory and it allows you to control the situation like much more. So it doesn't matter who you encounter, whether you're encountering a subordinate, whether you're encountering your own boss or colleague, you can still use this process in any situation, especially if you're negotiating a deal. I mean, I've seen this work a lot with my colleagues who are negotiating like crazy deals, that they're trying to get the best deal possible. And, sometimes it's like, are you crazy? Am I going to do like, no, pause. Assess, analyze, act, and then just get through the situation once you do that. So you're right, it is muscle memory. It's something that people can really benefit from.
Yeah. See, now I'm going to have to now pick up the book and open my Amazon packet to make sure that Well, that just means we'll have to figure out how we can somehow connect in the near future and, be able to sign the book. But Eric, this was awesome. Again, congratulations on new family member, new book, new adventures. It just sounds like you're just at a very blessed phase in your career at the moment and life. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, well, Chrissy, thank you for having me. I'm glad we were able to have this happen. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll definitely have to figure out another way to connect. And I cannot wait to read the book and have a more poignant conversation with you about it.
Thank you. And for all the listeners out there, Chrissy's going to put the link on Amazon, and you can also get in touch with me on my website. I do monthly newsletters. Another one's coming out this month. It's called What Your Professor Forgot to Mention. And it deals with, students trying to not being aware of what to expect in the workforce and giving them those tools to learn within the first 60 days. When they're onboarded onto their work and onto their new job. So I put all types of tips and strategies out there in my newsletters as well. So I welcome, people check out my website at tailoredtrainingsolutions.com if you're also interested in being a member as well.
Awesome. And we'll put the link to the newsletter on the show notes as well. Well, thank you again, Eric. And thank you, my go-getters, for tuning in today. This is Christy Lindor signing out with the Misi Muse Unplugged Pop-Up Podcast. Here's to your journey to greatness.
Tune in every Friday for new episodes syndicated on iTunes, Google Play Music, and many more. Visit www.misimuse.com for more information.